everyone, and welcome back to Life in the Fab Lane, a Maysteel podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about the 2025 Global OCP Summit. We're lucky that some of our team members were on site to get the latest trends, and today I'm joined by Andy Smith and Eric Hamilton. Thanks, guys, for joining today.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is going to be a great topic for anyone who's interested in what's happening in the data center world. There's obviously quite a bit of conversation around AI, liquid cooling. So I want to hear from our engineering team, first off, what was your favorite thing that you saw on the floor? What was their wow moment at the summit?
Well, so for me, I think the biggest thing, that would affect us on the rack side of things, if you will, is Meta's new ORW rack. That one kind of stood out for me. It's what they're calling a wide rack, double the size, double the width of a standard rack, just to accommodate the new larger equipment that we're seeing to support all the AI initiatives. And so you get out on the floor and you take a look at this rack, and this rack is huge. So I don't know what you thought about that, Andy, but
first thing that got me at the OCP Summit was the attendance this year over last year. I got the privilege to attend the show with Eric in 2024, and the sheer number of people that were there this year compared to last year, it was great to see the collaboration among a lot of industry leaders in the data center world. It was pretty cool to see and be a part of, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because, when we were talking before we got on screen and hit the record button today, one of the things we were talking about is the community that's built around OCP and really moving the data center world forward. Why is it so important for engineers to get on site and be at these events rather than get the recap later, right?
I think one of the important things there, and Eric hit it right on the head, as far as getting up to date on what's the latest specs, what are the latest things that these industry leaders are pushing towards. I mean, we've heard the AI story. We know that it's a lot of power. A lot of power comes a lot of heat. So they're looking at all the different avenues as far as how they're going to keep these things cool with liquid cooling. We got to see things like a liquid cooled bus bar, which is something a little bit newer for this year compared to last year. Getting that collaboration across the companies is key here, and it's one of the main selling points. Every seminar and every sit-down session that Eric and I sat through, they finish it up with the takeaways, and they're asking people to jump on board and jump in the calls and join the community to provide your feedback, whatever discipline you're in. So we're in the rack business. They want to hear from the manufacturing guys. You want to hear from the data gear guys. It's a team effort to try and drive this because everybody understands that nobody's going to win this market or build this huge opportunity all by themselves.
Yeah, and I think that also speaks, the value, and Eric, I think this will be a good point for you is, the value of having fab and engineering in the same room as big tech, because a lot of those companies were also there to tell you, hey, here's what we're going to need, and their needs are moving pretty darn fast.
Most definitely. So on the shop floor, you're seeing everything from servers to new racks to, everything, liquid cooling. Andy mentioned the liquid cooling and the bus bars. So all of that is really good, especially for us to see, because we not only are looking to see what the latest specs are, but since we mainly deal in custom design work on racks, we have to see what is out there right now, what everyone's pushing, what the latest and greatest is, to make sure that we can accommodate all that in the custom designs for our customers, because that's what they're expecting. Most of our customers come to us and say, hey, we want an ORV3 rack, but we want to do this, this, and this. And you get out on the shop floor this past summit, and it was like, hey, this is what we are going to need to accommodate now coming up. So it's great.
That's awesome. And I think, some of the other things that people want to know is what we saw at the show and just in general at the industry. We don't have to give specific examples because obviously some of that is the secret sauce to how we do what we do. But I would assume, this is going to be changing and shifting some of the ways that we think about thermal management, material selection, et cetera, when we move forward on data center products in some ways.
Yeah, it's definitely going to have an effect on, our techniques on how we have gone about so far in the data center world. It's also going to factor in a lot of things that haven't been a piece of our equation to this point. As far as, okay, we touched on the ORW spec. Well, we're going away from that standard width rack now because they're realizing that with all this power they need more cooling capacity
Mhm.
and being able to keep this in a workable footprint. So you start taking and going double the width on a rack is certainly going to be a new challenge, if you will, that we're up against, trying to figure out how to make our end also function with whoever our customer might be.
Yeah, and I mean, this is one for both of you. I mean, what are some of the challenges the industry is going to see right now just with the sheer density that is being required of these racks? I mean, what are some of the challenges our customers are coming to us to solve?
Well, one thing is, you mentioned the ORW rack, and yeah, it's a massive rack, but along with that comes massive weight loads. So one of the challenges that was brought up is that, hey, we're getting so much point loads on the floor that this ORW rack has completely done away with casters. So we're almost getting to the point where we are leaving kind of the mobile rack design to accommodate AI, and moving almost more towards a shelving kind of design concept instead of a rack concept, which is really interesting because you take a look at how aisle containment has changed over the past couple of years to accommodate the liquid cooling. Aisle containment is no longer just something that you hang from the ceiling, a chimney to get out the hot air. Aisle containment has now morphed into kind of a structural framework that you're mounting to the floor to mount not only your cabling but now the liquid cooling on top of that. And so it makes sense that since you have a structural framework that you're building off of, that you move away from kind of a mobile rack and rack and stack rolling these things in to more of a shelving kind of build on site design concept. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of moves forward in the future.
That's I know I laughed at the one point I made to Eric while we were at the show is I said, how long before we have a customer approach us and want to go and build a containment that has the shelving built into it? I
Yep.
just seeing it
That was the first thing we talked about, I think, when we saw this range.
it's getting to that point, like Eric said, where you're not necessarily seeing the mobility because there's so much that's going into these things. And like I said, I pointed and I said, how much longer till we build that data or that aisle containment? And we're just building shelves at this point. We're not
Right.
even building a mobile rack.
Right. Right. Well, that's really interesting, especially if you even look, to the beginning of the data center, and the rack, stack, and ship was one of the main points that people were looking at, especially for any large data center construction builds overall. So that's super interesting to look at overall. I think the other thing that's interesting is, how do we think that's going to affect data center construction timelines? Is it going to affect it? Is it going to be longer? Is it going to be more complicated? Are they going to have to take more time in it? I mean, what would that mean for data center construction in 2025 and beyond?
We kind of talked about that, and that was really a forefront, even starting with our conversations from the show in 2024, where okay, all the big tech companies were coming through and saying, with lots of power comes lots of heat. So water cooling was immediately brought to the front of the equation. Water cooling is certainly going to change it may not necessarily change the construction of the building itself, but it's certainly going to make the data aisle itself a different configuration. Trying to figure out, are they going to have a central distribution unit where they're going to distribute water like a big radiator out to the aisle, or are they going to go and have, individual plumbing for each rack and try and pump that through? Those are the challenges that you hear a lot of the businesses are still, or a lot of the companies are still facing. And how can we go and get the most efficiencies out of these things without frying up components? And that's where, like I said, the water cooled bus bar
Mhm.
is pretty interesting piece of equipment that we got to see several examples of there. And in the end, it makes sense. You're trying to get the efficiencies out of it. So yeah, why wouldn't you go there? It just means it's one more piece in that puzzle, though, that everybody's trying to figure out how they're going to make that work around to the future of data centers.
Right. And it's funny because, even 3 years ago, you heard the word liquid cooled and people got nervous, right? Because, like anything, you don't want any kind of liquid around electronics. Really, the future of what we're seeing in the data center space. And that's why events like these are fantastic because they bring together all of the minds into one room and we can ask the questions. And I think one thing that's fantastic about this OCP community, because it is a program, a project built around, minded professionals in the data center space who want to improve, is everyone is willing to share. I mean, did you guys see that on site? Just lots of good conversation.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I think Andy, brought up a good point at the beginning, and one of the things that we noticed this year was just the sheer amount of people that were there. I think they were talking about 11,000 people there this year compared to last year, where I think they were in the 8,000 range. So more and more people are getting a message that the OCP design is kind of the way to go these days to accommodate your AI requirements, which leads to or encompasses, server design as well as liquid cooling, as well as heavy duty power requirements. And I think that message is getting out, and it's evidenced by the growing of the community. So it was pretty mind-boggling to see, moving keynote speakers from, a large room within the conference center to a tent that they had to build out into the parking lot. It just kind of goes to show that the community is growing and people are taking notice.
That's awesome. And if each of you, whoever wants to go first, had to sum up the OCP 2025 Global Summit in one word, what would it be and why?
I'd say exciting. It's exciting across the board because this affects everybody at whatever level you have on the data center technology. I mean, we're at the rack and IO containment side, and it means opportunities and changes for us going forward on what we do. It's exciting to see that business evolve and be a part of that going forward.
Yeah, I think for me, I would kind of use the word unity. You're bringing up the whole situation where it's a community, and like Andy just mentioned, hey, everybody was there, from equipment manufacturers to rack manufacturers to cooling. One of the main goals I think this year that we saw was to bring this community together and work as one. It's not going to be, hey, separate, rack manufacturers working on this part of it. It's going to be everybody together working to, make sure the rack accommodates everything else, the power requirements, the cooling requirements. So it's moving from a fragmented industry to one of unity, I think.
That's awesome. Well, I definitely appreciate the time you guys took to go on site. It sounded like it was a fantastic event. I assume both of you will be registering next year as well from the feedback that we got. So really appreciate your time today, Eric and Andy. Thank you so much. And join us for Life in the Fab Lane next time. Thank you.